Welcome. I'm Barbara Call, Senior Director of Content Strategy at CIO Marketing Services, and I'll be your host for today's webcast titled Modernizing the Enterprise Network, Building a Connectivity Strategy that Delivers Scale and Innovation for the Future, and brought to you by CIO and Spectrum Enterprise with a guest speaker from IDC. I have two speakers with me today. First up is Andrew Craver, Vice President, Enterprise Segment Marketing at Spectrum Enterprise. Welcome, Andrew. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Barbara. I'm happy to be here. I am responsible for Spectrum Enterprise's go-to-market planning across our client segments. And that extends across the 4 Ps of marketing mix and really making sure that we're providing a customized experience for all of our client segments.
All right, nice to have you. And my second speaker is Paul Hughes, Research Director at IDC. Welcome, Paul. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Barbara, and glad to be here. I run IDC's Future of Connectedness research practice. I focus specifically on looking at how enterprises are adopting next-generation connectivity to address issues around agility, performance, and scalability. So very happy to be here.
Great, nice to have you. So, gentlemen, I'd like to kick things off by discussing the current state of the enterprise as it relates to connectivity and transformation. Paul, what's your research showing in terms of key trends and expectations for the short and the medium term?
Sure, thanks, Barbara. Well, our research is, IDC does a lot of research looking specifically at the communications space, and I focus specifically on enterprise connectivity. And what we're finding is that no matter what vertical market you look at, we're seeing this just exponential growth of traffic as it relates to in the importance of managing smart devices, HDs, video and audio, the impact on extending business processes that help to basically bring greater focus on driving employee and user experience. So with all of that together, we're seeing investment across the enterprise of really bringing this enablement of connectivity that aligns machines, devices, sensors with the needs of the business. So whether that be the employees focusing out to the customer, delivering those kinds of personalized services, or delivering a better user experience, connectivity has become such a critical part, I think, of any transformation that's occurring. And as a result, this is also driving this convergence of IT, of telco, and of cloud coming together. And as they converge, there is this desire to bring all of these technologies together to drive greater levels of performance, scale, and resiliency across the enterprise. And I think when you combine all of this together, even in sort of the interesting times we're in, the connectivity remains a significant priority for virtually any enterprise that we talk to.
Okay. Andrew, what are you seeing in terms of trends and expectations with your enterprise customers?
Yeah, we see and we hear pretty much exactly the same thing, and it all starts with, as Paul mentioned, connectivity. And so, what we've seen is really an acceleration in the rate of expanded demand for higher bandwidth speeds. And, I think it's clear that also, as Paul mentioned, it's driven by increasingly more complex sort of value-added business applications being powered by internet protocol. And, probably a driver of this is the macro trends that we see arising from COVID that certainly seem to be permanent fixtures of the enterprise market today in terms of the hybrid work environment or the work from home environment that now has become more and more pervasive. And this has really driven a need for flexible access to corporate network assets and key business capabilities that are accessible both from home and from the office, and often are stored and managed out of the cloud. And so the expectation that we hear from our client base is really you need to serve our needs in terms of this flexible work environment, and really all of the implications that has in terms of security and managed services to make sure that we're not adding to the total cost of ownership for our clients in terms of the financial costs that these bring to bear, but also the stress that this can put on their internal IT resources and staff.
All right, thank you. So Paul, I want to come back to you. In your recent Future of Connectedness Enterprise survey, what were some of the key motivators driving business and network transformation?
Sure. I think a lot of it actually aligns with what Andrew was saying, and that is with the survey that we sent out, which was global in nature, and we asked a variety of questions specific to how organizations were trying to prioritize investment and aligning it specifically around business outcomes. What we found was, and I don't think that's going to come as much of a surprise, but there is a big shift towards cloud-enabled connectivity and infrastructure, and with this move towards this cloud-first approach. What it's doing is it's extending the overall cloud strategy to really help drive scale, efficiency, and greater levels of performance across the enterprise, whether it's internal tools, whether it's interacting with a customer and ensuring or with a partner. All of these investments really play a critical role in ensuring that in the times that we're in, particularly where hybrid work is very much here to stay, even though we are seeing a lot of organizations bringing sort of folks back into the office with this sort of with return to office initiatives, what it's still doing is it's forcing organizations to think about, how do they address a lot of these critical issues. So, our survey data shows, as you can see on the slide, we've got about 34% of organizations are, prioritizing that cloud first approach. But, just under that, there is a consistent focus and desire to, manage that hybrid work environment. So consolidating and creating greater consistency across technologies that can help drive employee productivity and collaboration. So using those kinds of tools that help to eliminate a lot of those kind of classic data silos, but also ensure that as organizations have to address the importance of managing increasing data volumes, how all of that kind of ties to the need for investment across the network. So as a result, we're also seeing continued focus and investment in the kinds of tools that bring that help provide greater levels of network insights and analytics. And all of this, of course, has to be wrapped in security. I think you're not going to see any. I don't think you're going to see any IDC survey or any research survey where security is not always ranked, at the top. So all of these become kind of critical requirements for any focus around transformation going forward.
Andrew, looking at this data, what stands out to you from the Spectrum Enterprise side? And does this resonate with what your clients are asking for?
Well, first off, yes, it certainly resonates. And, what stands out for me, and, if I sort of juxtapose that with what I hear from clients, it's really that in delivering on the promise of the cloud, it's absolutely critical to do that securely. As Paul mentioned, security is paramount. I think it's important to note the impact of COVID on networking and sort of the macro trends, as I mentioned a minute ago, that has caused, and the sort of ripple effects of that. But I think we all saw that cyber attacks went up exponentially during COVID. And, what drove that? Well, it was increasing numbers of people accessing key corporate assets, either on the cloud or on the network, and doing so without really, a plan behind that increase in that type of networking application. So what we see is, when it comes to the cloud, our more savvy technical buyers really prioritize doing all the things that it takes to get all that efficiency from the cloud architecture, but doing it securely. And private cloud connectivity is really a key to a lot of those more advanced technical buyers. The other piece that we're seeing is, in addition to the more well-known security implements out there, such as a firewall or DDoS protection service, there are new security requirements, including zero trust, that are driving growth in services and applications such as SASE, to make sure that companies are able to lock down the access to those core corporate assets that are now being stored and accessed differently. And really what it boils down to in terms of what we hear directly from our clients and sales engagements is the key is in finding a partner that can deliver all of this in a way that isn't more complex or more expensive.
All right, thank you. Paul, as you look out over the next 12 months, where do you see enterprises focusing their connectivity investments?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's in both the primary and in the survey-based data research that I'm doing. What I'm finding is that virtually every organization is looking at ways to address the issues of scale, address the issues of security, but also looking at ways to take advantage of cloud-based infrastructure, network, and services that help move a lot of those critical functions to a cloud-based environment. And in doing so, what this does is it brings this new level of resiliency, a new level of business continuity, and access across the organization. And as a result, not surprisingly, I mean, our data shows that almost a quarter of enterprises are sort of positioning this sort of cloud-first approach as kind of one of their core goals moving forward. But closely aligned just below that is this critical focus on productivity. And as Andrew said, with the impact of COVID and the pandemic, there has been such a dramatic shift in the way that organizations think about how they use connectivity as a way to make the organization more agile. And that means figuring out the kinds of tools and services that can ensure that their employees can connect all of those critical systems, can stay productive, can share critical data across the organization to make those kinds of critical business decisions that are going to be important for the customer, for the business. So with all of that, this focus around productivity and operational agility sort of ranks as number 2. And I think that goes hand in hand with this desire by organizations to, as they're looking at sort of connectivity as a strategic component of driving agility on all aspects of the business, making sure that the employees can stay productive really brings a lot of that to the forefront. And then I think thirdly is the importance of, as organizations are going through this level of scale, and as the network becomes more important, and as connectivity becomes, and the demands on the network increase as we start seeing more devices connecting to the network, greater desire for bandwidth, and the fact that employees may be connecting either on-premise or off-premise, the importance of understanding network performance ranks as number 3. So we see here about 16% of organizations were prioritizing network performance. So any kind of investment that keeps that critical data moving and optimizes network performance and reduces latency really become those critical priorities. So I think you can kind of see from a lot of the data on this slide that the real focus going forward is on efficiency, is on performance, scale, and productivity. So aligning all of those together really are becoming those critical points that are going to help ensure that organizations can scale and can innovate in the coming years.
All right. Thank you, Paul. Great insights. Andrew, next question is for you. As you work with your enterprise customers across key business verticals, what are some of the key criteria they're looking for as they upgrade their networks? And how is Spectrum Enterprise helping with products and services?
Yeah, great question. So, sticking with the theme, that demand for higher bandwidth is really what powers all of these disparate and really, sort of fundamentally shifting applications that are changing the landscape. So, faster networks with lower latency in terms of the technologies that are specific to your question is key. And just an example of that is, I think all of us, I can confidently say, saw a drastic increase in the number of video calls we were on during COVID, and probably since then as well. And anyone that's been a part or a participant in a UC&C perhaps enabled video call with a participant that had a poor internet connection knows that makes what has otherwise become sort of normal, from a work environment standpoint, become something that's a little bit tedious and makes you sort of, wish you were in the office with somebody at times. So, it all starts with faster networks and lower latency, so that you can power all of those applications and sort of make it seamless. In terms of that acceleration of maintaining those key assets on the cloud, that really comes with a need to integrate that cloud access with the rest of your networking. And part of the way that we have enabled our clients in this regard is we have upgraded both of our core network platforms, Enterprise Network Edge and Managed Network Edge, with dedicated private cloud connections that go hand in glove with the inherent SD-WAN functionality that those platforms convey for users. And then we talked about it a little bit on a couple slides ago, but in terms of network security, it all comes down to that as the lowest common denominator in terms of value. If you can't secure your communications, if you can't secure your intellectual protocol, or excuse me, intellectual property, none of all of these great functions and applications really are worth it. It's just too much risk. And so, really the whole management of the attack surface that's expanded right along with the technology in terms of networking that's come about is the need for security that makes it all viable. And so, I mentioned SASE, but there are other capabilities out there that go hand in glove with SASE in terms of conveying that confidence in the new way of working. And with that comes a requirement for visibility and analytics that can actually show you in real time the health of your network, the security of your network, who is on your network, and what they're accessing. And then lastly, remote work applications for the distributed workforce. Work from home is only going to be something that's viable for everybody if you can have the type of user experience that makes it pretty much seamless in terms of the comparison to the experience when you are working from the office. And so the way that we've satisfied that requirement is by providing a teleworker service along with VPN access that would allow workers to have the exact same desktop experience that they would in the office.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Paul, my next question is for you. What are you seeing from a business policy perspective? And how are organizations addressing this change from both a technology and a staffing perspective?
Well, it's a great question. I think it aligns with everything Andrew was saying on the technology side. With this shift, as organizations go through this process of of looking across all these critical aspects of scale and innovation and aligning a lot of the technology needs, what we're finding and what I'm seeing is that most organizations really need to align around a true unified enterprise migration approach to where they are updating technologies that are driven from a centralized goal with decisions coming from the C-suite. And I think what this does is, particularly for larger organizations where whether you're multinational or you've got offices, you've got regions. One of the critical things that becomes important is really creating a centralized strategy that as you're dealing with ensuring that you have that level of bandwidth to support the business. As you are moving towards cloud-enabled networking, as you're adopting security and SASE, that you're doing that on a consistent basis across all across the region. So this means standardization of not just connectivity, but of the tools, of the solutions, of the services that then become used across lines of business, across regions, and help to eliminate a lot of these the traditional data and networking silos that we've seen in the past. All of this comes and has to be aligned with ensuring that as you think about the impact on human skills and on staffing. And it's important that as all of these changes come into play, that your IT staff, that your network staff, and even all of your employees have an understanding of how they can actually maximize the value of all of this connectivity that's coming into play. And I think this is something where as we start seeing the investment in areas like SD-WAN, Edge, embracing greater levels of mobility, it's important that organizations think about and work with their technology providers to ensure that that part of the goal for driving innovation is that employees maximize the benefit that they can get out of it. And then lastly, I think what also is very important is of course tracking and measurement. And when we think about all of these investments in aligning these new technologies to drive greater performance, it's tracking and measuring the performance benefits. And this is particularly now as we see organizations embracing SD-WAN, embracing Edge, and managed network services, using and aligning these expectations with the investment expectations with the business needs. These all become critical as organizations are looking at using these new technologies to increase their level of agility.
Okay, great. Paul, you mentioned managed network services, and this is a key area of focus for Spectrum Enterprise. So Andrew, my question is for you. Can you talk about Spectrum Enterprise's approach for managed network services and how your customers can become more agile as a result?
Absolutely. So, at the highest level, our approach to managed network services is to take the complexity out of putting together all these solutions that we've been talking about thus far, take that out of our clients' list of things to worry about, and leave the management of all of those capabilities to us. And so, this is valuable for a number of reasons. One is that it solves a skill gap issue, and most specifically, if you think about IT resources, which we all know are both expensive and constrained, they have a lot of mobility in terms of being able to command not only a high salary, but in what industry they want to work in. So if you think about that, and then you think about as an enterprise business leader, trying to find an IT resource that can both be an expert in whatever your native business is, but also in advanced networking and cybersecurity, keeping up with cutting edge technologies like SASE, for example, or how to set up teleworkers in a secure way. It's really hard to find that singular resource that can do all those things, and frankly, that wants to do all of those things. So really, in terms of solving the skill gap issue for our clients, what we're really doing there is allowing our clients to take advantage of the advantages that we can convey in terms of scale and networking focused expertise. And in so doing, we allow them to focus their IT staff on their core business, and make it a little easier to find that resource that can fill their needs. And the next value piece for us is really being able to be that single provider and to provide that single solution. So many of our clients have multiple balls in the air at any given time, and more than you would probably expect, have multiple provider environments from a security, networking, connectivity perspective. And so the ability to do business with a single provider is something that really allows them, again, to reallocate that focus towards their core business, and making sure that they're doing everything they need to do to be successful. And then refocusing IT on business outcomes, from design to deployment. What we're looking at here is refocusing IT on the deliverables that they're responsible for, and mapping to those KPIs, the measurements that Paul mentioned. From a infrastructure management perspective, when you choose to purchase one of our managed services, everything from the design to the implementation to the ongoing monitoring and management is something that you can leave to us. And that, again, allows you to move your focus towards your core business, and while enjoying all the benefits that come along with all of the solutions that I've already mentioned, that allow you to operate in the new business environment, and the networking aspects that are required today. And then scalability. One thing that we saw during COVID was a lot of our clients were taken by surprise in terms of the vast increase in the bandwidth that they required to run their business. And that was, in large part due to so many of their employees now accessing, key applications remotely, which chews up the bandwidth. And so deployment of our ultra high speed data network, which scales all the way from 25 meg all the way up to 100 gig, is really something that allows clients to have peace of mind that when they establish connectivity with us, they're not going to be in a position where they're not able to scale their business needs to the bandwidth requirements that they've got. And in addition to that, the network platforms that we offer allow extensibility from anything as simple as a managed firewall all the way up to IoT device management combined with cameras for physical security capabilities. And then the last piece, which I think is especially valuable in today's financial environment and the uncertainty that many businesses find themselves in as a result, is that we subscribe to an approach that we call the OpEx model, which really allows our clients to avail themselves at the point where they're turning up a new network of all of the expensive networking hardware that requires, available to them at the subscription cost for the service, as opposed to deploying capital against that network hardware. And so what that allows our clients to do from a value perspective is really not just allocate those constrained IT resources towards their core business, but also their capital investment, and in so doing, not having to make a trade-off in the future of their business and investing in that versus having a secure, high-performing network.
Okay, thank you. So Andrew and Paul, you've both provided a lot of great insight on how enterprises can use connectivity to modernize their current businesses and operations. To wrap things up, Paul, you and the IDC research team published a variety of predictions around technology and investment for the coming 5 years. Where will organizations focus future connectivity investments for scale and innovation?
Yeah, great question. So what I thought I would do is share a couple of our futurescape predictions, and all of these really align to how organizations are thinking about where we think organizations are going to go as it relates to their investment, their strategy around network and IT. And in these four predictions, in the very short term, we're expecting to see, about 40% of enterprises are going to be really focusing on driving a new level of operational efficiency and security by using SD-WAN and adopting SD-WAN and security as a way to leverage that cloud managed networking and security. This becomes one of those critical technology areas that I think we see is going to have a dramatic impact on the enterprise, both from a cost and from a performance perspective. Along with that, however, I think it's important to highlight that we've talked a lot about sort of the human skills and the changes that are occurring. We're also expecting, within the next 2 years, about 30% of enterprises are going to be looking at network attentiveness across all of their IT teams, and this becomes something that as we consider the importance of security, DevOps, AIOps, and how all of this is impacting the change on the enterprise, that there's this importance for organizations to think about how do they align a lot of those connectivity investments with skills developments, and the way that their employees are becoming much more aligned around business outcomes as opposed to sort of tactical changes. So that becomes another one of those critical areas. By 2025, we're expecting to see organizations that have embraced that digital approach are going to be augmenting this goal of cloud first with what we call this multi-access network fabric. And this is where you think about the impact of network resiliency and business continuity and resiliency. What we believe is that there is such an importance for organizations to think about the multi-access connectivity and using all of these diverse technologies to ensure that all of those mission critical processes can move forward. Andrew mentioned telehealth, but you also think about any of these smart industries, smart agriculture, smart manufacturing, the critical nature of ensuring that you have adequate bandwidth and capabilities to ensure that the business can stay connected. In many cases, any issue that comes from any type of network issue can have a direct impact on the business. So the importance of bringing this network fabric and enabling that becomes of critical importance. And then lastly, and I think it aligns with everything we've been talking about today, is that so many organizations are investing their IT budgets to focus around connectivity and security, but a lot of them are going to be using a lot of these assets to embrace their own smart products. And so what we're going to see in the next 3 to 5 years is how organizations are using not just SD-WAN, but they're going to be looking at sort of the future rollout of and the future benefits of their investments in connectivity and security to help deliver much more innovative products and services. And this relates to their own as a service, cloud-enabled products, or again, their own smart products and services that bring a lot of those key capabilities to market. So I think we're going to see over time that connectivity becomes such a critical component of this entire strategy towards scale and innovation, and you can kind of see it in these predictions.
All right. Thank you, Paul. Very interesting. Before we close, Andrew, would you like to give us a quick overview of Spectrum Enterprise?
Absolutely. So who is Spectrum Enterprise? We are part of Charter Communications, and we're a national provider of enterprise technology solutions, and we serve some of the country's biggest brands. In fact, 83% of the Fortune 500 relies on us for technology solutions. And we talked about it a bit today, but just to reiterate, we combine our world-class fiber network with a broad set of capabilities, which include a number of WAN technologies, managed services, security, and collaboration tools. And we really pride ourselves on standing apart from other providers by tailoring our solutions to clients' needs. And what we hear from the clients that choose us is we provide a differentiated experience. We do not take a one-size-fits-all approach the way that a lot of our competitors do. And we purposefully build solutions that are extensible and can grow with your requirements and the nature of technology. So we think ahead to deliver for you today while planning for the future. We operate one of the largest networks in the US, and it's a couple of indications of that. We're the #3 US provider of fiber lit buildings. We're the #3 US Ethernet provider in terms of share, and we certainly have the expertise to deliver against all of your needs.
Thank you both. That's all the time we have for today. I'd like to thank my guests, Andrew Craver of Spectrum Enterprise and Paul Hughes of IDC. And thanks to you, our audience, for joining us. For additional information on this topic, please visit the resources section on your screen. For CIO and Spectrum Enterprise, I'm Barbara Call.